The backhand came without warning. Maya's head snapped sideways, her cheek exploding in white-hot pain as Victor's knuckles connected with her face. The metallic taste of blood flooded her mouth. "You think I'm stupid?" Victor's accent thickened when he was angry, the words grinding through his teeth like broken glass. "You think I don't see you looking at every car we pass? Every exit sign?" Maya kept her eyes down, her zip-tied wrists trembling in her lap. The van reeked of cigarettes and motor oil. Through the grimy window, the Nevada desert stretched endlessly, a graveyard of sand and scrub brush baking under the merciless July sun. "Answer me when I talk to you, little rabbit." Victor grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. His breath was rancid. "Nobody's coming for you. Your parents think you're on some camping trip with friends, yes? By the time they realize something is wrong, you'll be in Tijuana, working off your debt in one of my associates' establishments." He released her with a shove, turning back to his phone. Maya's mind raced. 3 days. She'd been in this van for 3 days, ever since Victor had grabbed her outside her apartment in Boulder. He'd posed as a rideshare driver. She'd been stupid enough to believe him. Her father's voice echoed in her head. Sergeant Major Thomas Kennedy, retired Marine Corps, who'd made her memorize Morse code before he'd let her go away to college. "Maya Bird, the world's a dangerous place. A smart woman has tools nobody can take from her. Not your phone, not your voice, but what's in your head. That's yours forever." She'd thought he was being paranoid. Now, staring at the endless highway ahead, she knew he'd been preparing her for exactly this. The van began to slow. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. Through the windshield, she could see the faded sign, Desert Rose Station, last gas for 85 miles. "Need fuel," Victor muttered, pulling off the highway. "And you get 2 minutes to use the bathroom. You try to run, you try to signal anyone. I put a bullet in whoever you talk to, then I put one in you. Understand?" Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. The gas station was a sun-bleached relic from another era, 2 pumps, a small convenience store with bars on the windows, and nothing else for miles in any direction. The parking lot was empty except for, her breath caught, a motorcycle, black and chrome, massive and powerful, parked in the shade of the building's overhang. And beside it, a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a leather vest that revealed muscular arms covered in intricate tattoos. His face was hidden behind dark sunglasses and a close-cropped beard streaked with gray. He stood perfectly still, methodically wiping down his bike's mirror with a red cloth, every movement deliberate and controlled. He looked dangerous, like a predator carved from stone and shadow. He was also her only chance. Victor yanked her out of the van, keeping one hand clamped around her upper arm as he started the pump with the other. 2 minutes, he growled. "Bathrooms around back." Maya walked on legs that felt like water, Victor's eyes burning into her back. She had maybe 15 seconds before she turned the corner and lost sight of the biker. 15 seconds to make a decision that would either save her life or end it. The man was still cleaning his mirror, apparently oblivious to everything around him. But as Maya passed within 10 feet of him, something made her stop. Maybe it was the absolute stillness of his posture. Maybe it was the way his hand had paused, just for a fraction of a second, when Victor had spoken. Or maybe it was just desperation. She turned her head toward him, her heart thundering so loud she was sure Victor could hear it from across the lot. The biker didn't move, didn't acknowledge her. The mirrored sunglasses revealed nothing. "Please," Maya thought. "Please see me. Please understand." She began to blink. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. SOS. Her eyes burned with the effort, tears threatening to spill over and ruin everything. She blinked it again, harder, more deliberate, her entire body screaming the message through the only language she had left. "SOS, SOS. Please, God, please. What the hell you doing?" Victor's voice cut through her concentration like a knife. Maya's blood turned to ice. She spun around, finding Victor 3 steps away, his hand reaching inside his jacket where she knew he kept his gun. I was just," she stammered. But Victor wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking past her, at the biker. Maya risked a glance back. The man had stopped wiping his mirror. He stood absolutely motionless, those dark glasses fixed in her direction. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The desert heat, the hum of the gas pump, the distant cry of a hawk, all fading into background noise. Then, Barely perceptible, the biker nodded. Once. The gesture was so small that Maya almost missed it. But it was there, a tiny dip of the chin, a silent acknowledgement that screamed louder than any words could have. Come on, Victor snarled, grabbing her arm hard enough to bruise. Bathroom. Now. As Victor dragged her away, Maya's eyes stayed locked on the biker until the last possible second. He'd gone back to cleaning his mirror, as if nothing had happened. But his other hand, she noticed, had moved to his bike's ignition. In the bathroom, a cramped, filthy closet that reeked of urine and bleach. Maya pressed her forehead against the cool tile wall and let out a shuddering breath. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely work the faucet. He saw me. He understood. But what could one man do, even a dangerous-looking one, against Victor and whatever network he belonged to? Was she just trading one nightmare for another? Or had she just signed that biker's death warrant along with her own? Too late now, she thought, splashing water on her face. The signal's been sent. When she emerged, Victor was waiting, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. He scanned the parking lot as he shoved her back into the van. The clerk visible through the store window, the empty highway. The biker was gone. Victor's shoulders relaxed slightly. Fucking tweakers in the desert, he muttered, more to himself than to her. He slammed the van door shut, sealing Maya back into her mobile prison. As the engine turned over and they pulled back onto the highway, Maya pressed her face against the window, searching the shimmering heat waves for any sign of the man on the motorcycle. Nothing. The desert swallowed everything. Maybe she'd imagined the nod. Maybe her oxygen-deprived, terrified brain had conjured hope from nothing. Maybe. The growl of an engine, deep and powerful, rumbled somewhere behind them. Maya's pulse quickened. She couldn't see anything in the side mirror from her position, couldn't crane her neck without Victor noticing. But that sound, like thunder rolling across a distant mountain, was unmistakable. Victor lit a cigarette, apparently unconcerned, his eyes on the empty road ahead. Maya closed her eyes and counted her heartbeats, forcing herself to breathe slowly. She'd done all she could. She'd sent the signal. Now, somewhere behind them in the wasteland, she could only pray that someone had received it, and that the man who'd nodded once in silent understanding was exactly as dangerous as he looked. Silas Ghost Vance had been riding motorcycles for 23 years, and in that time, he developed an almost supernatural ability to read the highway. The subtle shift in wind patterns that meant rain. The micro-expressions of drivers about to make stupid lane changes. The particular shade of panic in someone's eyes. Like the girl at the gas station. He'd noticed the van the moment it pulled in, a white Chevy Express with tinted windows and Nevada plates. The kind of vehicle that screamed, "Nothing to see here," so loudly it might as well have had a neon sign. He'd noticed the driver too. Late 40s, Slavic features, shoulders like a street brawler, and eyes that were constantly moving, cataloging threats. But it was the girl who'd made Ghost's blood run cold. Early 20s, college sweatshirt, zip-tied wrists that she was trying to hide by keeping her hands clasped in her lap, and a bruise blooming fresh and purple across her left cheekbone. Ghost had kept cleaning his mirror, his face impassive, but every tactical instinct he'd honed in 8 years of special operations was screaming at him. The driver was trafficking her. No question. And by the look of things, he was moving her south, probably to the border. Then the girl had done something extraordinary. She'd looked directly at him and blinked. Not random blinks. Deliberate, measured, desperate. 3 short. 3 long. 3 short. SOS. Ghost's hand had frozen on the mirror. In all his years since leaving the service, through all the bar fights and runs with the Styx ferrymen, through every bit of violence and chaos that had become his normal, he'd never expected to see that signal again. The international distress call. The cry for help that had echoed through his headset in a dozen war zones. The girl blinked it twice more, tears glittering in her eyes, her entire body radiating the kind of fear that made Ghost's jaw clench. He'd learned Morse code in basic communications training, back when he'd been Specialist Vance, 75th Ranger Regiment, before Afghanistan and the ambush that had shredded his unit and left him with nightmares that still woke him in cold sweats. In his old life, those 3 letters had meant brothers in danger. Friendlies pinned down. Help needed now. The meaning hadn't changed. Ghost had given her the smallest nod he could manage, just enough to let her know he'd received her message. then forced himself to look away before the trafficker noticed. He'd watched them leave in his peripheral vision, watched the bastard shove the girl into the van like cargo, watched them pull back on a Highway 95 heading south. Then Ghost had waited exactly 60 seconds, paid for his gas with cash, pulled on his helmet, and fired up the Dyna. The bike roared to life beneath him, 103 cubic inches of Milwaukee iron and raw power. He rolled out of the station slowly, casually, just another biker enjoying the open road on a hot July afternoon. He reached down and keyed the radio built into his handlebars, a custom job the club's tech specialist had installed. The encrypted channel crackled to life. "Brothers, this is Ghost." His voice was calm, flat, emotionless. Years of combat operations had trained him to stay ice-cold when things went hot. "I'm on 95 South, about 20 miles past Desert Rose. Tracking a white Chevy Express, Nevada plates Charlie Tango 7421. Single driver, one package." Static, then a familiar gravelly voice. "Ghost, this is Reaper. What kind of package we talking about?" Ghost's hands tightened on the handlebars. "The kind that blinks SOS in Morse code. Female, early 20s, visible injuries. Driver's armed, almost certainly trafficker." A pause. Then, "Copy that. What's your play?" "I'm going to follow. Keep distance, observe. I need eyes ahead in case he tries to divert. Can you get some brothers to Beatty? Maybe Pahrump." "Ghost, you know we can't just." Reaper's voice was cautious. The Styx ferrymen walked a careful line between outlaw and outright criminal. They weren't vigilantes. They weren't cops. They were a motorcycle club that valued freedom and brotherhood above all else. But they also had rules. And rule number 1, written into the club bylaws by Ghost himself when he'd become enforcer, was simple. The strong protect those who can't protect themselves. "I'm not asking the club to get involved," Ghost said quietly. "I'm asking my brothers if they want to ride with me. Personal favor. You can say no." More silence. Then, one by one, voices crackled through. "Hammer, northbound from Vegas. I can be in Beatty in 40. Wrench here. I'm already in Pahrump. Got 2 prospects with me. Diesel. I'm with Wrench. We're in." Ghost felt something tight and his chest loosened slightly. "Appreciated, brothers. Keep your phones hot. This might develop fast." He clicked off the radio and focused on the road ahead. The van was visible about a half-mile up, maintaining a steady 70 miles per hour. Ghost dropped back to 3/4 of a mile, far enough that he wouldn't spook the driver, close enough that he wouldn't lose them if they turned off. The desert stretched out on either side of the highway, a vast emptiness of alkali flats and distant mountains shimmering in the heat haze. Out here, people disappeared. Bodies weren't found for years, if ever. Perfect territory for men like the driver of that van, but also perfect territory for Ghost. He'd grown up in these deserts, learned to ride on these roads. After his discharge, medical, PTSD, and a shrapnel-scarred shoulder that still ached in cold weather, he drifted back to Nevada, to the emptiness that matched what he felt inside. The Styx ferrymen had given him purpose again. Brotherhood. A reason to wake up that didn't involve a bottle. Now, tracking this van through the heat shimmer, Ghost felt something he hadn't felt in years. Clarity. The girl had sent a signal. He'd received it. Everything else was just execution. He ran through tactical scenarios in his head. The driver was almost certainly armed. Probably a pistol, maybe something heavier. He'd have associates, a network. Traffickers didn't work alone. The smart play would be to call the cops, let them handle it. But Ghost had seen how that worked. Reports filed. Investigations that went nowhere. Girls who disappeared before trial. And even if everything went right, even if the driver got arrested and convicted, the organization he worked for would still be out there. Still hunting. No, this needed to be handled differently. The van's brake lights flared. Ghost immediately throttled down, watching. Were they stopping? Had the driver spotted him? But no. The van was just slowing for a curve, then accelerating again. Ghost let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Easy, he told himself. Stay patient. Stay invisible. An hour passed. Then 90 minutes. The sun was beginning its long descent toward the western horizon, painting the desert in shades of copper and gold. Ghost maintained his distance, occasionally falling back when other vehicles appeared, using them as cover. His mind kept returning to the girl. The way she'd looked at him, not with hope, because she was too scared for that, just with desperate determination. The kind of look soldiers got when they knew they were probably going to die, but refused to go quietly. She'd been smart, using Morse code. Smart and brave. Most people would have just screamed, or tried to run, gotten themselves killed. But she'd stayed calm, used her resources, maximized her one chance. Good, Ghost thought. Smart is survivable. Panic gets you dead. His radio crackled. Ghost, wrench. We're set up in Pahrump, about 3 miles south of town on 160. Got a good spot with visibility in both directions. Copy, wrench. Hold position. Target's still on 95, about 40 minutes out from your position if he stays on this route. Roger that. We'll be ready. Ghost clicked off and rolled his shoulders, fighting the stiffness that came from hours in the saddle. The Dyna hummed beneath him, steady and reliable. He'd customized this bike over 3 years. Reinforced frame, upgraded suspension, a motor that could outrun almost anything on the road. It was more than transportation. It was an extension of himself. The van was starting to speed up. 80 now? 85. He's getting nervous, Ghost realized. Checking his mirrors too often. Wondering about the bike that's been behind him for the last 100 miles. This was the critical moment. Push too hard, and the driver would panic, maybe hurt the girl. Back off too much and lose them. Ghost made his decision. He twisted the throttle, the Dyna surging forward with a beautiful roar of power. He pulled into the passing lane and started closing the distance, but not aggressively. Just enough to look like a biker who wanted to go faster, passing a slow vehicle. As he drew alongside the van, Ghost kept his eyes forward, his posture relaxed. Just another rider. Nothing to see. But in his peripheral vision, he could see the driver's face in the side mirror, could see the man's eyes tracking him with barely concealed suspicion. Ghost accelerated past, putting a quarter-mile between himself and the van before settling back to cruising speed. He'd planted the seed now. The driver knew there was a biker on the road. But bikers were common out here. Dozens passed through every day. The question was, would the driver see a threat, or just another traveler? 5 minutes later, Ghost had his answer. The van suddenly decelerated, dropping from 85 to 60 in a matter of seconds, swerving slightly as if the driver had seen something on the roadside and wanted to slow down to look. It was a test. If Ghost also slowed down, if he maintained the same relative position, the driver would know he was being followed. Ghost kept his speed steady, pulling farther ahead, until the van was just a white speck in his mirror. Then, a mile later, he took an exit for a scenic overlook, pulled off the road, and waited. He didn't have to wait long. 3 minutes later, the van appeared, cruising past at exactly the speed limit, the driver's knuckles white on the steering wheel. Yeah, you're scared, Ghost thought. You should be. He let the van gain another half-mile, then pulled back onto the highway. The game had changed. The driver knew something was wrong, even if he couldn't quite identify what. That would make him dangerous. Unpredictable. Ghost keyed his radio. All brothers, target is spooked. Repeat, target knows he's being watched. Stay sharp. This could go sideways fast. Hammer's voice came back. Ghost, you want us to call local law enforcement? Get them ready for a stop. Ghost thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. Negative. We handle this ourselves. Cops might spook him into doing something stupid. And if he has the right connections. He didn't need to finish the sentence. They all knew how this worked. Dirty cops. Paid-off judges. Evidence that disappeared. Understood, Hammer said. We're with you, brother. The sun was touching the horizon now, filling the sky with violent shades of red and orange. Blood and fire. Ahead, the van's brake lights flared again. But this time, they didn't dim. The van was stopping. In the middle of nowhere, on a straight stretch of highway with nothing but sand and sagebrush for miles. Ghost's pulse quickened. He was still a half-mile back. Too far to see details. But every instinct was screaming that something was about to happen. He opened the throttle, the Dyna leaping forward. And in the growing darkness, Ghost could just make out the driver's door opening, a figure stepping out into the middle of the road, something dark and metallic in his hand. The hunt was about to become very, very real. Victor had been moving girls across the border for 6 years, and in that time, he'd developed a finely tuned sense for trouble. The slight wrongness in how a border guard looked at his papers. The car that followed too closely for too long. The stranger who asked too many questions. That motorcycle was wrong. He'd first noticed it shortly after leaving the gas station. A black shape in his rearview mirror that kept pace, but never got closer. Coincidence, he'd thought initially. Nevada was full of bikers, especially in summer. But coincidences didn't last for 90 miles. Victor lit another cigarette with shaking hands, his eyes flicking between the road ahead and the mirror. The biker had passed him about 20 minutes ago, then mysteriously pulled off at an overlook. But now, Victor checked the mirror again. Now he was back, maintaining that same careful distance. Police? Victor's mind raced through possibilities. No, cops didn't work like this. They'd have pulled him over by now, or radioed ahead for backup. Private investigator? Possible, but who would hire one? The girl's family didn't even know she was missing yet. Unless... Victor glanced at Maya in the rearview mirror. She was staring out the window, her face blank, but there was something in her posture. A tension that hadn't been there before the gas station. What did you do? He asked quietly. Maya's eyes snapped to meet his in the mirror. What? At the station. What did you do? I went to the bathroom. That's all. You were watching me the whole. Don't lie to me. Victor's voice rose to a shout. That fucking biker. You signaled him somehow, didn't you? How? Maya's face had gone pale. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything to anyone. She was telling the truth, at least the literal truth. She hadn't spoken to anyone. But Victor's instincts were screaming that something had happened. Some communication had passed between the girl and that rider. He checked the mirror again. Still there. Still keeping that exact same distance. Fuck this. Victor pressed down on the accelerator, the van's engine whining as they hit 85. His eyes stayed locked on the mirror, watching to see if the biker would also speed up, would maintain that same interval. For a few seconds, the motorcycle stayed at its original speed, falling back. Victor felt a wave of relief. Then the bike surged forward, closing the gap with frightening speed. Shit. Victor jerked the wheel, swerving into the passing lane, then back, testing. The motorcycle stayed in the right lane, maintaining speed, but not pursuing aggressively. Just there. Maya had braced herself against the side of the van. What are you doing? Shut up. Victor's mind was racing. He could try to outrun the biker, but the van wasn't built for speed, and motorcycles could maneuver in ways his vehicle couldn't. He could stop, confront whoever it was, but if it was a cop, that would be suicide. If it wasn't a cop, if it was someone the girl had somehow contacted. Victor had killed men before. 3. Over the years, competitors who'd tried to muscle in on his territory, a client who'd threatened to go to police. He'd never killed a man on a public highway in broad daylight, but there was always a first time. He reached under his seat, fingers closing on the grip of his Glock 19. 15 rounds. More than enough. The motorcycle was pulling alongside now, in the left lane. Victor's hand tightened on the gun. Through the passenger window, he could see the rider clearly for the first time. Big man, leather vest, face hidden behind a dark visor. The bike was massive, chromed and black, engine rumbling like contained thunder. Victor waited for the rider to look at him, to make some gesture, some sign of intention. Instead, the biker just accelerated smoothly past, like Victor and his van were completely beneath notice. Within 30 seconds, the motorcycle had pulled a quarter-mile ahead, then half a mile, eventually disappearing around a distant curve. Victor's grip on the gun slowly loosened. Maybe he'd been wrong. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe paranoia was making him see threats where none existed. But 40 years of surviving in a world where mistakes meant death had taught Victor to trust his instincts. He pulled off the highway onto the shoulder, tires crunching on gravel, and killed the engine. What are you doing? Maya's voice was tight with fear. Victor ignored her, stepping out of the van with the Glock held low against his thigh. The desert air hit him like a furnace blast. In the silence, he could hear his own heartbeat, the tick of the cooling engine, the whisper of wind through sagebrush. Nothing else. The highway stretched empty in both directions, heat waves rising from the pavement. No motorcycle. No cars. No signs of pursuit. You're losing it, Victor told himself, getting paranoid like old Maxim before they put him in the ground. He stood there for 3 full minutes, watching, listening. The sun was dropping toward the horizon, painting everything in shades of amber and gold. Beautiful, in its way. Victor had never been one for beauty. Deserts were just convenient places to hide bodies. Finally, satisfied that he was alone, Victor climbed back into the van. He pulled out his phone, still no signal out here in the middle of nowhere, and mentally calculated the route. 2 more hours to Pahrump. Hand off the package there, collect his payment, head back to Las Vegas. Simple. He looked at Maya in the mirror. She was crying silently, tears tracking down her face, her zip-tied hands clasped in her lap like she was praying. Save your prayers, Victor said flatly, starting the engine. Where you're going, God doesn't listen. He pulled back onto the highway, settling into a steady 70 miles per hour. The tension in his shoulders began to ease. Paranoia, that's all it had been. Just his imagination running wild in the desert heat. The sun touched the horizon, and in the rearview mirror, barely visible in the gathering dusk, a single headlight appeared. Victor's blood turned to ice. The motorcycle was back. Ghost had learned patience in Afghanistan, during long reconnaissance missions where moving too fast meant death. He'd learned deception in countless tactical exercises, where the enemy who thought they were hunting you was already in your trap. Now, riding through the purple desert twilight, he used every bit of that training. The van was trying to shake him now, speeding up and slowing down at random intervals, swerving between lanes. The driver knew he was being followed. That was fine. Ghost wanted him nervous. Nervous people made mistakes. His radio crackled. Ghost, this is Hammer. I'm 10 minutes out from Beatty. Where do you need me? Ghost checked his GPS, mental calculations running through decades of experience. There's a junction about 5 miles south of town where 95 meets Old Mine Road. Industrial area, mostly abandoned. Can you get there? Roger. What's the play? I'm going to push him that direction. He'll be looking for a place to lose me, somewhere with turns and cover. When he sees that junction, he'll take it. I need you blocking the far end. Don't let him get back to the main highway. Copy. Hammer out. Ghost twisted the throttle, closing the distance. The van immediately accelerated, the driver panicking. Perfect. Time to escalate. Ghost pulled into the left lane, coming up fast on the van's driver's side. Through the window, he could see the trafficker's face, pale, sweating, eyes wild. The man's right hand was on the steering wheel. His left was somewhere out of sight. Armed, Ghost thought. Which means we're past the point of peaceful resolution. He was okay with that. As Ghost drew even with the driver's door, he raised his left hand, the one not controlling the throttle, and rapped his knuckles twice against the van's window. Not hard enough to break it, but hard enough to be heard, hard enough to send a message. I can reach you anytime I want. The trafficker's face contorted in rage and fear. He jerked the wheel right, trying to force Ghost off the road. Ghost had been expecting it. He'd been watching the man's shoulders, the tension telegraphing the move a split second before it happened. Ghost leaned left, the van's bumper missing his leg by inches, then punched the throttle. The Dyna surged forward with a roar, shooting past the van like it was standing still. Ghost pulled in front, then immediately hit his brakes. The van's brakes squealed, the vehicle swerving wildly as the driver fought to avoid rear-ending him. Ghost could see the man's mouth moving, screaming obscenities that were lost in the engine noise. Then Ghost accelerated again, opening up the distance to a few hundred yards before settling into a steady pace. He'd made his point. I'm faster than you. I'm better than you. And I'm not going away. The psychological effect would be devastating. Ghost had seen it in combat. The moment when an enemy realized they were outmatched, that all their training and weapons and bravado meant nothing against a superior force. Some men surrendered. Some men ran. And some men did something stupid. The van suddenly veered right, tires screaming as it took an exit ramp at 60 miles per hour. Ghost smiled grimly behind his visor. The ramp led to a surface road that paralleled the highway for about 5 miles before dead-ending at an old mining operation. Running for cover. Good. Exactly what I wanted. Ghost took the same exit, the Dyna handling the curve like it was on rails. Ahead, the van was fishtailing on the rough pavement, kicking up clouds of dust. The surface road was barely maintained, full of potholes and washboard sections that would shake the van apart if the driver wasn't careful. The desert here was different from the open flats. More gullies and ridges, scattered Joshua trees, and rock formations creating pockets of shadow in the fading light. The kind of terrain where things could happen unseen. Ghost keyed his radio. All brothers, target has left the highway, heading east on. He checked his GPS, County Road 12. Repeat, we are now on secondary roads. This is going to end soon, one way or another. Wrench here. We're moving to intercept. ETA 12 minutes. Hammer. I'm in position at the junction. waiting for him to come to me. Ghost clicked off and focused on the chase. The van was still trying to outrun him, but on these roads, the motorcycle had every advantage. Ghost could take the corners tighter, recover from bumps faster, see obstacles earlier. They passed an abandoned gas station, then a cluster of rusted trailers that might have been a work camp decades ago. The sun was almost gone now, just a sliver of red on the horizon. In another 10 minutes, it would be full dark. Ahead, the van's brake lights suddenly blazed. Ghost's combat instinct screamed a warning a split second before the driver's window shattered outward, before the muzzle flash lit up the interior of the van. He was already moving, throwing the bike into a hard lean to the right as bullets cracked past where he'd been. One round spanged off the Dyna's exhaust pipe with a sound like a hammer on an anvil. Ghost accelerated into the evasive maneuver, steering with his whole body, the bike dancing on the edge of control. Another muzzle flash. Another crack of gunfire. But the driver was shooting blind, one-handed, from a moving vehicle on a rough road. Ghost, meanwhile, had spent 8 years training to stay calm under fire. He pulled off the road entirely, using a shallow gully for cover, throttle wide open. The Dyna could handle this terrain for short distances, fat tires, high clearance, reinforced frame. He paralleled the road for 50 yards, hidden from the van by a ridge of rock and scrub. When he emerged back onto the pavement, he was a quarter-mile behind the van. Safe distance. For now. Ghost keyed his radio, his voice perfectly steady despite the adrenaline dumping into his bloodstream. All brothers, target is fired on me. Repeat, target is armed and hostile. Multiple shots. We are now in active engagement. A chorus of acknowledgments came back, all of them laced with barely controlled fury. The Styx ferrymen had many rules, but one of them was sacrosanct. You attack one of us, you attack all of us. The driver had just made this personal. Ghost reached down and unzipped the leather saddlebag on the right side of his bike. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a Sig Sauer P226, the same model he'd carried in the Rangers. He pulled it out with practiced ease, checked the chamber by feel, then reholstered it in the holster he wore at the small of his back. He'd really hoped it wouldn't come to this. Ghost had spent years trying to leave violence behind, trying to find peace in the brotherhood and the open road. But some things, some people, only understood one language. Ahead, the van was approaching the junction where Old Mine Road intersected with their current route. In the gathering darkness, Ghost could just make out the silhouette of another motorcycle blocking the left-hand turn. Hammer, right where he was supposed to be. The van slowed, the driver clearly seeing the roadblock, panic causing him to brake hard. He had 3 choices now: straight ahead into the mining complex, right toward open desert, or try to reverse and run the gauntlet back past Ghost. The van chose forward, plunging into the maze of abandoned industrial buildings that had once served the mine. Ghost smiled coldly. Wrong choice, friend. Very wrong choice. He rolled up to where Hammer was waiting, killed his engine for a moment. Hammer flipped up his visor, revealing a weathered face with a scar running from eyebrow to jaw. He's trapped now, Hammer said. Dead end about 2 miles in. Nothing but old warehouses and pit offices. How many brothers do we have incoming? Wrench and his 2 prospects. Diesel. Razor's about 20 minutes out. Maybe 8 riders total by the time this shakes out. Ghost nodded slowly, thinking through the tactical situation. The girl's still in there. We need to extract her without getting her killed. What about the driver? Ghost's expression went flat and cold. He fired on a ferryman. He's already dead. He just doesn't know it yet. Hammer's grin was wolfish. Let's go educate him. They fired up their bikes and rolled forward into the industrial complex, engines echoing off corrugated metal walls like the growl of approaching wolves. The hunt was entering its final phase. Maya had stopped screaming after the first gunshot. Now she just huddled in the back of the van, her zip-tied wrists pressed against her chest, her mind struggling to process what was happening. Victor had completely lost control, firing randomly out the window while steering one-handed down a dark road, shouting in Russian, or was it Ukrainian? His voice rising to a fever pitch. The van bounced violently over a pothole, throwing Maya against the sidewall. Through the rear windows, she could see headlights, multiple headlights now, not just one. The motorcycle had friends. They're going to kill me, Victor was muttering, his accent thick and slurred. They're going to fucking kill me. Need to. He slammed on the brakes. Maya was thrown forward, only her seatbelt keeping her from smashing into the front seats. The van skidded to a halt in what looked like the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse, rusted equipment and broken vehicles scattered around like a junkyard. Victor turned in his seat, the gun now pointed directly at Maya's face. In the dim light from the dashboard, his eyes were completely wild, pupils dilated, sweat pouring down his face. "This is your fault," he hissed. "You fucking signaled them somehow. I don't know how, but you did. So now you're going to be useful one more time." He grabbed her arm, dragging her toward the driver's side. Maya's mind went blank with terror. Was he going to shoot her? Use her as a shield? Throw her out as some kind of sacrifice? "Please," she heard herself saying. "Please don't." The roar of motorcycles, growing louder, coming closer. Victor shoved his door open and hauled Maya out with him, keeping her between himself and the approaching bikes. The gun was pressed against her temple now, the metal cold and hard. "Stay back." Victor screamed into the darkness. "Stay the fuck back, or I blow her brains out." The motorcycles emerged from between the buildings, two of them, headlights blazing, moving slowly and deliberately. They stopped about 30 yards away, engines idling. The riders sat perfectly still, like statues carved from shadow and chrome. Maya couldn't see their faces through their helmets, but she could feel the weight of their attention, the controlled menace radiating from them. "This doesn't have to end badly." Victor's voice cracked. "I'll let her go. Just let me leave. I'll dump her right here. You can have her. Just let me walk away." No response from the riders. They just sat there, engines rumbling like contained thunder. Maya's tactical mind, the part that her father had trained, the part that had kept her alive this long, was still functioning despite her terror. Victor was making mistakes. He had her in front of him, but he wasn't actually looking at her. His eyes were locked on the motorcycles, his attention divided. The gun at her temple was shaking, finger too tight on the trigger. One wrong move, and it could fire accidentally. More engines. Maya risked a glance to the left, and saw 3 more motorcycles emerging from a different direction. Then 2 more from the right. They were surrounded. "I'll kill her." Victor's voice rose to a shriek. "I fucking swear I'll kill her." One of the original 2 riders, the one on the right, on the bigger bike, reached up slowly and removed his helmet. Even in the dim light, Maya recognized him. The man from the gas station. The one who'd nodded. He was older than she'd thought, maybe late 30s, with gray at his temples and lines around his eyes that spoke of hard living. But his expression was completely calm, almost gentle. "No, you won't," the man said quietly. His voice was deep, controlled, like he was discussing the weather. "What?" Victor's gun hand was shaking so badly now that Maya could feel the barrel trembling against her skin. "You won't kill her," the man continued. "Because if you do, you lose your only leverage. And then me and my brothers will take our time with you. You know what we do to human traffickers out here in the desert." Victor tried to respond, but all that came out was a strangled sound. The man swung off his bike with fluid grace, standing in the wash of the headlights. Maya could see tattoos covering his arms, could see the leather vest with patches that read Styx Ferryman across the back. "Here's how this works," the man said, taking one slow step forward. "You let the girl go, right now. You do that, and I'll make it quick. Clean. Otherwise," he shrugged. "Well, like I said, we'll take our time. Stay back." Victor jerked the gun away from Maya's temple, pointing it at the advancing biker. It was the opportunity Maya had been waiting for. Every self-defense lesson her father had drilled into her came flooding back. She dropped her weight suddenly, using Victor's grip on her arm against him, pulling him off balance. At the same time, she twisted her head sharply away from where the gun had been. Victor stumbled, his finger tightening on the trigger reflexively. The gunshot was deafening, but the bullet went high and wide, sparking off metal somewhere in the darkness. Maya kept moving, remembering her father's voice. "Once you commit all the way. No hesitation." She drove her elbow backward into Victor's solar plexus with every ounce of strength she had. Victor's breath exploded out in a wheeze. His grip on her arm loosened just enough. Maya tore free and ran. She made it perhaps 10 steps before her legs gave out. Adrenaline and exhaustion and 3 days of captivity finally overwhelming her. She collapsed onto the rough gravel, her zip-tied hands barely breaking her fall. Behind her, She heard Victor screaming, heard the sound of another gunshot. Then the motorcycle's engines roared in unison, a wall of sound that seemed to shake the very ground. Maya rolled over just in time to see the biker, Ghost, one of the others had called him, moving faster than seemed possible for a man his size. He closed the distance to Victor in 3 strides. The trafficker tried to bring his gun to bear, but Ghost's hand shot out, striking Victor's wrist with surgical precision. The gun went flying. Victor tried to throw a punch. Ghost caught his fist mid-swing, twisted, and drove his knee into Victor's ribs with a crack that Maya heard clearly even over the engine noise. Victor went down. Ghost followed him, systematic and methodical. It wasn't a bar fight. It wasn't even really a fight. It was more like processing. Each strike deliberate, controlled, designed to incapacitate without killing. The other bikers had formed a loose circle now, their headlights creating a ring of illumination. None of them moved to help Ghost. They didn't need to. In less than 30 seconds, Victor was on the ground, gasping, both arms clearly broken, bleeding from a dozen places, but alive. Ghost stood over him, breathing normally, not even winded. He looked down at the broken man with an expression of absolute contempt. "You'll live," Ghost said quietly. "Long enough to answer some questions. My brothers are going to want to know about your network, your buyers, everyone involved in this operation." He paused. "And trust me, they know how to ask." Then Ghost turned away, dismissing Victor as if he was nothing more than garbage, and walked toward Maya. She was still on the ground, shaking so hard her teeth were chattering despite the desert heat. Ghost knelt down beside her, his movements slow and careful. "Easy," he said softly. "You're safe now. I'm going to cut those zip ties, okay?" Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. Ghost pulled a knife from his belt, a wicked-looking thing with a serrated edge, and sliced through the plastic restraints with one quick motion. Blood rushed back into Maya's hands, bringing pins and needles. She gasped at the sensation. Ghost sheathed the knife and carefully helped her sit up. "You did good back there," he said. "The elbow strike, the weight drop. Somebody taught you well." "My dad," Maya managed, her voice hoarse. He was a Marine." "Marine?" Ghost's eyebrow raised slightly. "That explains the Morse code. That was smart thinking. Brave. Saved your life." Maya looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. Up close, he seemed less like the terrifying biker she'd seen at the gas station, and more like, what? A warrior, maybe. Someone who'd seen violence and made peace with it. "Who are you?" she asked. "Nobody important," Ghost said. "Just someone who got your message." Behind them, 2 of the other bikers were zip-tying Victor's wrists and ankles with the same restraints he'd used on Maya. The irony wasn't lost on her. What are you going to do with him?" Ghost's expression hardened. "That's not something you need to worry about. What you need to worry about is getting to a hospital, getting checked out, calling your family." He stood and shrugged off his leather vest, draping it over Maya's shoulders. It was still warm from his body heat and smelled of leather and motorcycle exhaust, and something else, gunpowder maybe. "Can you stand?" he asked. Maya tried. Her legs were shaky, but they held. Ghost stayed close, ready to catch her if she fell. One of the other bikers approached, the one with the scar, who'd been blocking the road earlier. "Ambulance is about 20 minutes out," he said to Ghost. "And, we've got a situation." Ghost's jaw tightened. "What kind of situation?" "Victor here was making calls before you caught up to him. Looks like he reached out to some associates. We've got maybe 3 cars heading this way, ETA 30 to 40 minutes. Maya's blood ran cold. "More of them. Victor's network." But Ghost just nodded, like this was an expected development. "Then we've got time. Hammer, take Maya back to the main road. Wait with her for the ambulance. Rest of you with me. We've got some cleaning up to do." "I'm not leaving," Hammer said flatly. "Send one of the prospects with her." Ghost looked like he wanted to argue, but one of the younger bikers, barely 20, with nervous energy radiating from him, stepped forward. "I'll go. Need to make sure she gets somewhere safe anyway." Ghost studied the young man for a moment, then nodded. "Okay. Prospect, you take her to safety. You don't leave her side until the paramedics arrive, understood?" "Yes, sir." "And Prospect, if anything happens to her, if she so much as gets a paper cut between here and that ambulance, I will personally make sure you never wear a full patch." "Clear." The young biker swallowed hard. "Crystal clear." Ghost turned back to Maya. "This is Rabbit. Stupid road name, but he's solid. He'll keep you safe while we finish up here. Maya found her voice. What about you? If more of them are coming, we'll handle it. Ghost's tone left no room for argument. That's what we do. Maya knew she should leave, should get to safety, should let these men do whatever violent thing they were planning. But something made her reach out, touching Ghost's arm. Thank you, she said, for seeing my signal, for not ignoring it. Ghost's expression softened slightly. Some signals you don't ignore. Ever. Now go. Get somewhere safe. Rabbit led her toward one of the motorcycles, a smaller bike that looked newer than the others. He helped her onto the back seat, showing her where to hold on. As they pulled away, Maya looked back at the circle of motorcycles, at the men standing in the headlights like ancient warriors preparing for battle. Ghost was in the center, giving quiet orders, pointing to different positions. The last thing she saw before they rounded a corner and lost sight of the group was Ghost walking back toward Victor, pulling out his phone, his face set in lines of absolute determination. And Maya realized with crystal clarity that whatever was about to happen in that abandoned mining complex, Victor's associates were riding toward their own execution. The Styx ferrymen didn't just rescue people. They delivered justice. And in the lawless desert, their justice was final. Ghost watched the taillights of Rabbit's bike disappear into the darkness, then turned his attention back to the immediate tactical situation. 8 ferrymen total now, including himself. Victor trussed up and bleeding near the front of the van. And according to Hammer's intelligence, gathered from Victor's frantically checked phone messages, 3 vehicles incoming with an unknown number of hostiles. Talk to me, Ghost said to Hammer. What did you get out of his phone? Hammer held up the device. Text messages in Russian. I ran them through a translator app. 3 cars, probably 6 to 8 men total. Mix of muscle and what looks like a fixer, someone named Dmitri, who's apparently Victor's handler. They're coming to either extract him or clean up the mess. Time. Messages were sent about 40 minutes ago. Figure they were in Vegas or Pahrump when Victor called. So yeah, we've got maybe 30 minutes before they arrive. Ghost ran calculations in his head. The mining complex was a maze of buildings and equipment, but there were only 3 main access roads. They'd come in from the west, where Victor had entered. There was a northern route that was mostly collapsed and impassable, and an eastern route that connected to a different county road. They'll come from 2 directions, Ghost said, thinking out loud. Split their forces, try to box us in the same way we boxed Victor. Probably send the muscle first, keep the fixer back as reserve. Diesel, a massively built biker with arms like tree trunks, cracked his knuckles. So we hit them first. Set up an ambush. Negative, Ghost said. Too many unknowns. We don't know what they're armed with, what training they have. This isn't a war zone. We're not executing a military operation. Could have fooled me, Wrench muttered, gesturing at Victor's broken form. Ghost's expression hardened. What we did to him was justice for what he did to that girl. What we're about to do is self-defense. There's a difference. We're not murderers. Then what's the play? Hammer asked. Ghost looked around the complex, his tactical mind automatically cataloging cover positions, sight lines, choke points. 20 years of training didn't just disappear because you'd taken off the uniform. We show them something they'll understand, he said slowly. Power. Overwhelming force. We don't hide. We don't ambush. We make them come to us, and when they see what they're up against, we give them one chance to walk away. And if they don't take it? Razor asked. He'd arrived a few minutes ago, his bike covered in road dust from a high-speed run from Tonopah. Ghost's smile was cold. Then they learned the same lesson Victor learned. This is our desert, our road. And nobody brings this kind of evil into our territory and walks away clean. He started giving orders, positioning riders, setting up what would look to an untrained eye like a random gathering, but was actually a carefully designed kill box. When the traffickers arrived, they'd find themselves in a circle of motorcycles, headlights, and very dangerous men. Wrench, you and your prospects take the eastern entrance. Don't engage, just watch and report. If they try to flank us that way, light them up with your high beams, blind them, drive them back toward the center. On it. Diesel, Razor, you 2 are on the western approach. Same deal. Channel them toward this main lot. Got it. Hammer, you're with me in the center. We're going to make ourselves very visible. We want them to see us, want them to focus on us. Hammer nodded, understanding immediately. Ghost was using himself as bait, drawing the enemy's attention while the others controlled the perimeter. It was the kind of tactic that had gotten Ghost a Silver Star in Afghanistan, and a medical discharge when it went wrong. But it would work. It always worked. The bikers dispersed to their positions. Ghost walked over to Victor, who was conscious but clearly in agony, breath coming in short gasps. "Your friends are coming," Ghost said conversationally, kneeling beside him. "I need you to understand something. When they get here, you're going to tell them to leave. Tell them the deal's burned, that they need to cut their losses and run." Victor tried to laugh, but it came out as a wet cough. "Fuck you. They'll kill you all. Dmitri doesn't leave witnesses. Then Dmitri's going to have a bad night." Ghost stood. "Last chance, friend. You help me end this peacefully. I'll make sure the cops get you to a hospital before they lock you up. You don't." He shrugged. "Well, I've got brothers who'll be happy to continue your interrogation. Your choice." Victor spat blood. "Do your worst. Have it your way." Ghost walked back to his bike, swung onto the seat, and fired up the engine. Around the complex, 7 other motorcycles roared to life, the sound echoing off the metal buildings like the voice of some ancient machine god. Ghost keyed his radio. "All positions, sound off." One by one, his brothers confirmed they were ready. Ghost settled in to wait, one hand resting on the cig at the small of his back, the other on the throttle. The desert night was cold now, temperature dropping fast the way it always did after sunset. Stars were beginning to appear, brilliant and hard in the clear air. He thought about Maya, hoped she was somewhere safe by now, hoped this wouldn't traumatize her beyond repair. She'd been strong, smart, brave. She'd survive. He'd make sure of it. Headlights appeared in the distance. Western approach. 2 vehicles, moving fast. "Contact west." Diesel's voice crackled through the radio. 2 SUVs, blacked out windows. "They're not slowing down. Let them come," Ghost said calmly. Wrench, status on eastern approach. 1 sedan moving slow. "Looks like they're trying to be stealthy." So they had split their forces. Obvious tactic. Ghost would have done the same. The SUVs roared into the main lot, high beams blazing, trying to blind anyone watching. Ghost didn't flinch, didn't look away. He'd stared down worse than some headlights. The vehicles stopped in a semicircle formation, engines running. Doors opened. 5 men emerged, all carrying visible weapons. A mix of pistols and what looked like an AK variant rifle on one of them. They were dressed like civilians, but they moved like professionals. Ex-military, maybe, or organized crime with training. One man stepped forward, older, gray-haired, wearing an expensive suit that looked absurd in the desert setting. "Dmitri, presumably. Who the fuck are you?" Dmitri's English was good, barely accented. Ghost killed his engine. In the sudden silence, he could hear the eastern approach vehicle pulling into position behind the buildings, could hear his brother's bikes idling at various positions around the perimeter. "Name's Ghost," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the lot. "I'm the guy who intercepted your shipment." Dmitri's eyes found Victor's broken form on the ground. His expression didn't change. "I see. And you think you can just steal from us? Interfere with our business?" "Your business," Ghost said flatly, "is human trafficking, kidnapping, slavery. That makes it my business. Makes it everyone's business." Philosophical discussion. Dmitri made a dismissive gesture. "I want what's mine. You give me the girl and walk away, we forget this happened. The girl's already gone. Safe. You'll never touch her." Ghost leaned forward slightly on his bike. "But I'm feeling generous, so I'm going to give you a choice. You and your men get back in your vehicles, drive away, and never come back to Nevada. Do that, and you'll live to traffic humans another day." Dmitri laughed, a sound like ice cracking. "You're alone. 5 bikers against 8 of my men. You think you can dictate terms?" "Not 5 bikers." Ghost raised his hand. All around the perimeter, motorcycles fired up their engines. The sound was overwhelming, a tidal wave of noise that seemed to come from everywhere at once. High beams flicked on from 8 different directions, turning the lot into a blazing arena of light. Dmitri's men spun around, trying to track all the threats at once, weapons raising but unable to find clear targets. They were surrounded, outflanked, and they knew it. But Dmitri had been in this business long enough not to panic. "Impressive," he said, having to shout over the engine noise. "But still just motorcycles. Bikes against guns. That's a losing proposition." "Maybe," Ghost said. "You want to find out? Because I can promise you this. You start shooting, some of us will go down. But all of you will die. Right here. Right now. And your bodies will never be found. The standoff held for 10 long seconds. Dimitri's men were twitchy, adrenaline making them dangerous. One wrong move, one trigger-happy idiot, and this would become a bloodbath. Ghost kept his expression neutral, but his hand was on his pistol, ready. Around the perimeter, he knew his brothers were equally prepared. They'd all been in bad situations before. They knew how to stay cool. Finally, Dimitri lowered his hand. You've made a powerful enemy tonight, biker. Add it to the list, Ghost said. Now get the fuck out of our desert. Dimitri turned to his men. Back to the vehicles. We're leaving. Boss? One of them protested. Now. Dimitri's voice cracked like a whip. The men backed toward their SUVs, weapons still raised, eyes scanning the ring of motorcycles. The Eastern approach vehicle, the sedan, suddenly reversed, tires spinning, making a run for it. Ghost keyed his radio. Let them go. All positions, maintain containment, but do not pursue. Repeat, do not pursue. He wanted them gone. Wanted this over without more violence. But he also wanted them scared. Wanted word to spread through their network that Nevada was bad territory, that the Styx ferrymen were watching. Dimitri was the last to get in his vehicle. He paused at the door, looking directly at Ghost. This isn't finished. Yeah, it is, Ghost said quietly. You just don't know it yet. The SUVs pulled out, moving fast. Ghost didn't relax until their taillights had disappeared into the darkness. Even then, he waited another 5 minutes before giving the all-clear. One by one, his brothers rolled into the central lot, killing their engines. The sudden silence was almost deafening. Hammer pulled up beside Ghost. That was close. We got lucky they decided to run. Wasn't luck, Ghost said. Was calculation. Dimitri's a businessman. He did the math, realized the girl wasn't worth losing half his crew over. He swung off his bike. But he'll be back. Different target, different time. Men like him don't learn. So what do we do about Victor? Razor asked, gesturing at the broken trafficker. Ghost pulled out his phone. We call the police. Anonymous tip about a suspected human trafficker at this location. Let the law handle him. We've got enough evidence on his phone to put him away for decades. And if he talks, tells them about us. He'll try, Ghost acknowledged. But he's got no proof. No witnesses who'll back up his story. And even if they believe him, what are they going to charge us with? We didn't kidnap anyone. Didn't shoot at anyone. All we did was ride our motorcycles in the desert at night. He smiled slightly. Victor's the one who'll be answering questions about the girl, about the trafficking network, about the gun he fired at me. It wasn't perfect. There would be complications. But Ghost had learned long ago that you couldn't save everyone, couldn't fix every problem. You did what you could, when you could, and you lived with the consequences. He made the call to 911, giving them coordinates, then immediately powered down the phone and removed the battery. Burner phones were wonderful things. Mount up, he told his brothers. We're gone in 3 minutes. Different directions, different routes. Regroup at the clubhouse tomorrow night. They moved with practiced efficiency, leaving no trace of their presence except tire tracks that would be gone with the first wind. As Ghost fired up his Dyna and pointed it north, toward the open highway, he felt the familiar weight of exhaustion settling over him, but also satisfaction. They'd saved a life tonight, delivered justice, made the desert a slightly safer place. It was enough. He twisted the throttle, the bike surging forward into the darkness, and thought about a young woman named Maya who'd been smart enough, brave enough to send a signal in Morse code. Some signals you didn't ignore. Ever. 3 weeks later, Ghost was in the Styx Ferryman Clubhouse in Reno, working on a carburetor rebuild, when Hammer walked in with a package. This came for you, Hammer said, tossing the small box onto the workbench. No return address. Just says Ghost on it. Ghost wiped his hands on a rag, frowning. He didn't order parts under his road name. Didn't give out the clubhouse address to anyone outside the Brotherhood. He opened the box carefully, years of military training making him cautious of unexpected packages. Inside was a letter and something wrapped in tissue paper. Ghost unfolded the letter first. The handwriting was neat, feminine. Dear Ghost, I don't know your real name, and I suspect that's intentional, but I wanted you to know what happened after that night. I spent 2 days in the hospital in Las Vegas. The police interviewed me extensively. I told them everything, about Victor, about being kidnapped, about the gas station. They asked about the bikers who rescued me. I told them I never saw them clearly, that it was dark, that I was traumatized, and everything was confused. Victor was arrested and charged with kidnapping, human trafficking, weapons violations, and about 10 other crimes. His organization has been under FBI investigation ever since. They found 6 other victims who they've been able to reunite with their families. Because of you. Because you saw my signal. I finished my semester, late, but my professors were understanding. I changed my major from geology to criminal justice. I want to work with human trafficking task forces, help other women the way you helped me. My father says I'm following in his footsteps, but smarter. I'm enclosing something that belonged to my father. He died last year. Cancer from burn pit exposure in Iraq. Before he passed, he gave me his old Ranger scroll patch. He said to give it to someone who embodied what it meant to be a Ranger. Courage, honor, service to others. I think he'd want you to have it. You saved my life, Ghost. I'll never forget that. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure your example, that we stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves, continues. Thank you. For everything. Semper Fi, Dad would have liked that. Maya Kennedy. Ghost carefully unwrapped the tissue paper. Inside was a tan and black scroll patch, the kind Rangers wore on their uniforms. It was worn, faded, the stitching starting to come loose in places. It had clearly been treasured. He stood there for a long moment, the patch in his hand, memories flooding back. The good ones, the brotherhood, the mission, the belief that what they were doing mattered. And the bad ones, the ambush, the screaming, the blood, the nightmares that still came on the worst nights. Hammer peered over his shoulder, reading the letter. Hell of a thing, he said quietly. She's going into law enforcement? Apparently. Ghost carefully placed the patch back in the box. Her old man taught her well. Marine Corps Ranger Dad. That's where she learned the Morse code. You going to keep it? The patch. Ghost thought about it. Part of him wanted to send it back, to say he wasn't worthy, that he was just a broken veteran who rode a motorcycle and tried to keep the darkness at bay. But that wouldn't honor Sergeant Major Kennedy's memory. Wouldn't honor what Maya was trying to do with her life. Yeah, he said finally. I'll keep it. He tucked the box into his locker, beneath his spare riding gloves and the photos of his old unit. The men who hadn't made it home. The brothers he'd lost. You did a good thing, Hammer said. That night. Hell, we all did. Ghost nodded slowly. Victor got 25 to life. Federal prison. They're using his phone to track down his entire network. He paused. And Dmitri? Disappeared. Rumor is he went back to Eastern Europe, figured the heat was too much here. Good. Let him stay disappeared. Ghost went back to his carburetor, his hands working automatically while his mind wandered. 3 weeks since that night in the desert. 3 weeks of nightmares about what could have gone wrong. About the girl who might have died if he'd ignored that signal. About the violence that still lurked just beneath his carefully maintained calm. But also 3 weeks of knowing he'd made a difference. That Maya was alive, safe, building a future. That other girls might be saved because of the information they'd recovered. That the desert roads were a little less dangerous. It wasn't redemption. Ghost didn't believe in redemption anymore. But it was something. A purpose. A reason to keep writing, keep watching, keep fighting when fighting was necessary. His phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. This is Maya. Hope you don't mind. I tracked down your number through some creative investigation. Turns out criminal justice classes teach you useful things. Just wanted to say hi. Let you know I'm doing okay. And that if you're ever in Boulder, coffee's on me. Smiley face. Ghost smiled despite himself. Persistent, this girl. Brave. Smart. She'd go far in whatever she chose to do. He typed back. Stay safe out there. And remember, some signals, you always answer. Gee. He hit send, then powered down the phone. No need for prolonged conversation. He'd said what needed saying. Hammer was watching him with a knowing expression. She's going to be one hell of a cop. Yeah, Ghost agreed. She is. Outside, the sun was setting over the Nevada desert, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Through the clubhouse windows, Ghost could see his brothers gathering in the parking lot, bikes gleaming in the fading light. Someone was grilling burgers. Someone else had music playing. Laughter drifted through the open door. Brotherhood. Purpose. A place to belong. It wasn't the Rangers. It wasn't Afghanistan. But it was home. And sometimes, on the open highway with the wind in his face and the desert stretching endlessly ahead, Ghost could almost forget the darkness. Could almost believe that the world was a place worth saving. One signal at a time. 6 months later, Maya Kennedy stood at her graduation from the Colorado Police Academy, her hand raised in oath, her father's Ranger scroll patch tucked safely in her pocket. In the crowd, her mother wiped away tears of pride. Her younger sister cheered loudly. Her father's old Marine buddies stood in a respectful line, dress blues and medals gleaming. But Maya's thoughts were elsewhere, on a dusty gas station in Nevada, on a desperate gamble that had saved her life, on a silent nod from a dangerous stranger who turned out to be exactly the kind of hero the world needed. After the ceremony, one of her instructors pulled her aside. "Kennedy, you've been assigned to the Human Trafficking Task Force as a liaison. It's unusual for a rookie, but your experience." He trailed off, uncomfortable. "I understand," Maya said. "Thank you, sir." That night, alone in her apartment, Maya pulled out a map of the American Southwest. She marked the gas station where Ghost had first seen her signal, marked the mining complex where the rescue had happened, began plotting known trafficking routes based on FBI intelligence. There were patterns, routes the traffickers used, places they stopped, connections that could be exploited. And Maya Kennedy, armed with her father's training and her own hard-won wisdom, was going to find them. She pulled out her phone, found the number Ghost had texted from months ago, hesitated, then typed, "Starting my new job tomorrow. Human Trafficking Task Force. Going to need good intelligence on desert routes, places where things happen away from official eyes. You interested in being a consultant?" Strictly unofficial, of course. She didn't expect a response. Ghost had made it clear he operated in the shadows, didn't want official entanglements. But an hour later, her phone buzzed. "The Styx ferrymen ride 50,000 miles a year through Nevada, Utah, Arizona. We see things, hear things. Been looking for someone trustworthy to pass that information to. Someone who'd use it right. Welcome to the war, Officer Kennedy. Let's make the desert safer." Gee. Maya smiled, feeling her father's patch in her pocket, feeling the weight of purpose settling over her shoulders. Some signals you send out into the darkness, hoping someone would hear. And some signals came back, transformed into something larger. A network. An alliance. A promise that the strong would protect those who couldn't protect themselves. She looked at the map again, at the vast emptiness where evil thrived because good people looked away. Not anymore. The code had been received. The message was clear. And the hunt was just beginning.